What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the YouTube channel. With week 6 almost in the books, we now know our quarterback, running back, and receiver standouts and duds. Today we're going to take a deeper look into why these guys are slotted into their categories and what we can expect from them going forward. Do me a huge favor. If you like the video, drop a like on it. Comment down below who your fantasy standouts and duds were, and make sure to subscribe for more content. Let's get right into it. First up, we have Derrick Henry. The man rushed 22 times for 212 yards and scored 2 touchdowns, along with adding 2 receptions and 52 yards through the air, totaling 40.4 fantasy points. Derrick Henry was an absolute monster against the Texans, who now rank 32nd in the NFL in rush defense. This offense completely revolves around Derrick Henry. Even with how well Ryan Tannehill is playing, this offense is still based around play action and getting Henry going. A large chunk of his yards came on a 94-yard rush where he showed the power to break tackles and the speed to run away from cornerbacks. Absolutely unbelievable. However, next week for Derrick Henry gets a lot tougher, as the Titans will be taking on the Pittsburgh Steelers, who currently rank 3rd in the NFL in rushing defense. Even though the matchup gets much tougher, you will still be starting Derrick Henry as your RB1 and hoping that he can find the holes and use his power and speed the way he did today to continue to break runs and continue to have this Titans offense be an absolute powerhouse. Now, losing Taylor Lewan at left tackle due to injury is going to affect him going forward because Lewan is an absolutely elite offensive lineman. How quickly this will come into play, we will find out next week against Pittsburgh, but it's definitely something to keep an eye on as a Derrick Henry owner, that the line may not be the same that it has been. Next up, we have the rookie DeAndre Swift. Swift ran 14 times for 116 yards and hit pay dirt twice. The 2 touchdowns were a large part of what was able to help him accumulate his 27.3 fantasy points, putting him as the 2nd highest running back this week. Another large part of that was that the offense was able to really find its groove against the Jacksonville defense, who is 28th in the NFL in rush defense. So the question becomes, are you rushing out to trade for DeAndre Swift, or is it more of just a matchup dependent type of game? Personally, myself, I could see Matt Patricia and this offense starting to feature DeAndre Swift more as they drafted him to be the featured back. However, I would be a little hesitant going out and trading for him in fantasy right now just because his stock price is going to be higher than it has been absolutely all year. Next week, the Lions have to take on the 13th toughest rush defense in the Atlanta Falcons, who actually played pretty hard this week. I wouldn't trade for him yet. I would look to see if he has a little bit more of a down week and then see where he projects going forward after that. Swift was able to tag on an extra 3.7 fantasy points full PPR with 3 receptions for 7 yards. You would like to see that work get a little bit more involved in terms of actually gaining yards and a few more targets. If that continues to happen though, DeAndre Swift could end up having a massive second half of the year. Finally on this list, we have Tampa Bay Buccaneer Ronald Jones, who rushed 23 times for 113 yards and hit pay dirt twice as well. Ronald Jones has been an absolute stud these last couple weeks, and with Leonard Fournette and his injury history and currently being banged up and unclear when he's coming back, I would consider Ronald Jones to be a very viable fantasy option going forward and someone you must start week to week. The road gets even easier for Ronald Jones next week as he takes on the Las Vegas Raiders, who are currently 30th in the NFL in rush defense. I look for Ronald Jones to have another massive week next week, barring Leonard Fournette coming back, and even if Leonard is back, I expect them to continue to feed Ronald Jones and have him dominate the groundwork. All right, now let's get into some fantasy duds this week that disappointed for yourself and your entire team. First up, we have Antonio Gibson. Antonio Gibson rushed 9 times for 30 yards and had 4 catches for 25 yards. This was a week that I expected Gibson to have an absolute breakout week against the 19th ranked rush defense in the New York Giants, but the hard truth that Antonio Gibson fantasy owners are dealing with right now is that J.D. McKissic is getting very much so involved in this offense, as J.D. McKissic got more rushing attempts and receptions than Antonio Gibson did this week. As long as J.D. McKissic is in the picture, Antonio Gibson is in an absolute timeshare of a backfield. This timeshare is going to absolutely limit his ceiling and even bottom out his floor a little bit. If Gibson doesn't hit pay dirt on a weekly average, his fantasy value is going to continue to drop. And while next week may seem like a positive matchup for Antonio Gibson and the Washington football team, who will be taking on the 22nd ranked rush defense in the Dallas Cowboys, the truth is that as long as J.D. McKissic is in the picture, Antonio Gibson cannot be viewed anything more than a flex play at best. Next up, we have Todd Gurley. Gurley rushed 20 times, which is an absolutely massive number. And if you told me going into the game that Todd was going to get 20 rushes, I would have expected him to have 100 plus yards and possibly even a touchdown. Instead, it was 20 rushes for 47 yards. He also added 3 receptions for 20 yards through the air, which did help his floor. But this was a very positive matchup for him. With the Vikings being the 18th ranked rushing defense, you would have loved to have been able to see more from him. Especially in a game where the Falcons had such a large lead for most of the game. You do love to see that Todd is getting the touches. You'd like to see him do a little more with them. And next week would be an amazing opportunity as the Falcons take on the Detroit Lions, who are currently 29th in the NFL in rush defense. I look for Todd to have a massive bounce back week. And if you're a team looking for an RB2, RB3 with RB1 upside, Todd Gurley is a phenomenal trade option. And lastly on this list, we have Raheem Mostert, who rushed 17 times for 65 yards. And while he did manage to look more like himself coming off of his injury, he injured his ankle on Sunday night and may miss time going forward. And even if he is to play, it'll be in a limited role. And next week, the 49ers take on the New England Patriots, who are currently 4th in the NFL in rush defense. Raheem Mostert fantasy owners are in a pretty scary spot right now with another injury, continuing to be in a timeshare, and a very difficult matchup next week. If you're in win now mode, I would suggest trying to move off of Mostert. However, if you have a good record and can play for more down the line, Mostert may be a good trade option to look into as long as his injury is nothing too severe. I appreciate everyone watching. Drop down below in the comments who your standouts and who your duds were. And make sure to like and subscribe, as the next video will be the receiver standouts and duds from the week. Peace out, guys.